We are joined by Professor PLO Lumumba. He is a lawyer, and this morning we are going to be talking about what Kenya needs as far as democracy is concerned. Professor, a very good morning to you, and welcome to Radio Generation.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Right, I always see you, on TV and on newspapers and so on and so forth. But actually getting to meet you and hearing some of the things that you have to say about this country, I feel like you have much more to offer as far as do I say politics or otherwise is concerned. And I hope one day, one time, because I know you did try getting into politics, but then again, ukamwa could step back. I hope one day, one time, you will mentor the next generation of amazing politicians. Yeah?
Socrates says that all of us are political animals, and we are mentoring them. And that also calls into question, what is politics? So in this country and in Africa, we think politics is the nonsense that goes around at funerals. Yes. Politics is the organization of human affairs for the improvement of their being.
Yeah.
Until the day we understand politics properly, we'll always confuse it for the nonsense at funerals.
Right. Yeah, and he has called it rightly so, nonsense, eh?
That's what it is, without giving it a Christian name.
I want us to focus on democracy this morning. And according to you, I think the Constitution of 2010 was one of the biggest gifts that Kenya got. I don't know, perhaps you might have a different opinion. It was supposed to deliver democracy in a way that Kenyans had never experienced before. But I kind of feel like that's not happening anymore. What's your opinion as far as that is concerned?
Mbuvi and City, my own view is that we missed the essence. I was there when we were doing the Constitution. I was there when we collected the views of the people of Kenya. I was there when we came up with the Boma's draft. And I remember one politician whom I'll not name because he's dead. When we had gotten to 2002 in the Kibaki administration, he told us publicly, we never needed a constitution. What we needed was power. And I remember a politician who is the most active opposition politician saying that a constitution can never be given to a country unless there is bloodshed. And as if he was a prophet, it took the ethnic clashes of 2007, 2008, and Kofi Annan and the UN and the external world for us to have a constitution in 2010. A very watered down constitution. If you look at the architecture of that constitution, which is liberal democracy, we got certain things wrong. And the politicians who are now given the task of midwifing that constitution on behalf of the people, many of them do not believe in that constitution. They do not believe in the presidential system that we have. They do not believe in human rights. They do not believe in devolution. And that is why you now see in Kenya the attempt to operate outside of the constitution, a la BBI, a la NADCO, or to constitutionalize the unconstitutional and to legalize the illegal. Because they can't operate within the constitution. They want to rule by fiat. And the people are also to be blamed because our civic awareness as a people is dominated by primordial ethnic instincts. So we respond to a low voltage ethnic warlord. If you are Gikoyo, if you are Kisi, if you are Luhya, if you are any other community, Kamba, that is what we do. Until the day that we realize that democracy is a limited government, and I seldom use the word democracy now because it's been so bastardized that I prefer to talk about good governance. So on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of the fidelity to the Constitution and fidelity to good governance, our country is at 3, meaning that 1 is the very worst and 10 is the best.
Professor, you've said our civic awareness is wanting. Perhaps let's expound a little bit on that. because we always say that the power belongs to the people, and the people are the ones who will decide the government and so on and so forth. But now you're telling us that we are not, from what I understand, it's like we are not mature enough to even perform those duties as far as our responsibility in making decisions are concerned.
It is not about immaturity. It is hypocrisy. It is selfishness. It is short-sightedness. And it is corruption. These are the evils that reside in the hearts and minds of the average Kenyan voter. That is why they respond to the stimuli of 200 shillings. That is why they respond to the stimuli of ethnicity. And because we have not liberated ourselves and become citizens, I think it is the Greeks who categorize the population into three. There are those who are tribalists, who think that it's only when men and women from their tribe preside over state instruments that they are safe. Then there are idiots who just don't care about how countries are run. And then there are citizens, people who love the country and think intergenerationally. Unfortunately, they are few and far between. I'm in a number of forums in WhatsApp where I remain silent, like Jesus Christ, we say on the wall. And you listen to people who have gone to school, professors. It has nothing to do with formal education.
Right.
It has everything to do with a reawakening. And I think that is the Kenyan problem. Look at the debate that you see. Look at our people when they are at funerals. Somebody is lying dead and somebody is talking about elections. Somebody is lying dead, ought to be respected, and they are talking about the economy. Somebody is lying dead and ought to be sent off, and they are talking about empowerment of the youth. That is how low we have sunk as a people. And until the day we consciously take charge and tell these individuals who I'm reluctant to call leaders that they are on the wrong track. And remember that many of these individuals who now rule the roost in Kenya are carryovers from the Moi administration. What did they know best? They knew that you go to a marketplace and you say that you are going to empower people. They knew that you summon people. Nowadays we have governors' residences and the status. You summon them and give them something called development. That is all they know. The Kibaki interruption was too short to have a permanent effect.
Right.
And look at the individual. The administration of President Kenyatta was simply a reload in many ways of the Moi administration. And of course, my good friend William Ruto was the prime mover in Youth for KANU 1992. That is where he was born and bred. And for that reason, the only thing that he knows is to run government by fiat. And fidelity to the Constitution. The Constitution is actually a hindrance, an irritant, which must be avoided at all costs. And if you are to respect it, it's just a salutary gesture to it. It is sad. It is painful. And we don't appear to feel the pain. We have been here. And this country is progressively, because of our lack of fidelity to good governance, losing our leadership role in Africa. Look at the bangles we make diplomatically. Otherwise, if it is not Sudan, if it is Congo, if it is not Congo, it is Israel. If it is not Israel, we Sahrawi. We are making blunder after blunder. And it is sad and painful at once.
Citi has been saying here time and time again that the problem is not the laws that we have, not even the Constitution. It's the fact that we as Kenyans don't hold our leaders to account. We don't question. We don't make sure that we question what is happening and literally run after them if they go in a different direction. Do you think that again boils down to our civic duty, or have we been so brainwashed by our local leaders that even nationally we are not seeing the bigger picture?
Citi is right. It is not a question of laws. We have a forest of beautiful laws. On Friday, I wrote to the man who is the head of NTSA about the state of the roads in this country, the quality of our driving. It is terrible across the country, and as if I was a Jewish prophet. Look at the number of accidents that we have had this time. Is it because we don't have traffic rules? Is it because we don't have bylaws? I drive on Jogoo Road in Nairobi and cows are grazing on rubbish. There are city council bylaws on what ought to happen. We have laws. The governor of Nairobi says at a public forum, I'm forming a company to employ 3,500 people. Looks good on paper, but on the basis of what law is he doing that? In other words, it is not a question of absence of laws. In fact, if we were to obey and to implement the laws we have, this would be El Dorado, the land of gold. But the reality is we have chosen to go the other way. Look at, if you permit me, this thing called NADCO. Mm-hmm. The President of the Republic of Kenya and the nominal leader of the opposition, Mr. Odinga, signed something which is unconstitutional. It is extra-constitutional, and we don't say anything about it. All the things that are to be found in that document are in the Constitution. Why are we going outside of the Constitution? Why are Kenyans not complaining about it? It is because we don't love our country sufficiently. We are not patriots. Yesterday, I saw in La Côte d'Ivoire people coming out in the streets of Abidjan and telling their president, Alassane Ouattara, we don't want a fourth term. Here, we watch on television as a young men and women are being shot. So we must rise up. And I've seen Kenyans do it. I was there in the year 1990s when I was in the Council of the Law Society, when we were in the streets. Mm-hmm. Making demands of the Moi administration. I remember in the 2000s when we were making the Constitution, people were there. That spirit must be rekindled, because the Kenyan politician has now discovered one thing, that our memories are short and selective, and that we are capable of being mobilized on an ethnic ground. So they say if one is from tribe A, their son or daughter can do no wrong. And for that reason, they have perfected the art that was introduced into this part of the world by the British, divide and rule. For them it was divide and conquer, but here it is divide and rule. And divided we are, and being dominated we are, painfully so.
Professor, there is nowhere I remember being taught anything about our Constitution, apart from me making that effort to access it online, read through it, and get to understand whatever it is that I will understand. And I don't want to excuse Kenyans here, but allow me to do it, because a majority of them don't know better. They do not know what exactly their rights are as far as the Constitution is concerned. They do not know what responsibilities they have as far as NADCO is concerned, or the 10-point agenda is concerned, or BBI is concerned. According to them, whatever they're being told by the President Uhuru or President Ruto or Raila Amolo Odinga, perhaps it is what at that particular point is what they will debate about. But I feel like they do not understand that they actually do have the power in numbers, and if they decided to rise up, they can actually make the changes they want. Look at what happened from last year to this year. The Gen Zs, or the Kenyans who went to the streets, majority of them ended up either being maimed, shot, and so demoralized, and so on and so forth.
Not majority.
A number of them, sorry. Mm-hmm. A number of them ended up, dying in the streets. They ended up hurting themselves, and so on and so forth. So when we see that on TV, when we see that on social media, why would I want to join my fellow brothers and sisters in the streets, and yet I might be the next headline tomorrow?
All struggle that give birth to good is sacrificial. The very fact that we regained our independence is because others sacrificed. If we don't sacrifice, we can lose this country. And it's not about civic or want of civic education. If you listen to the vernacular or vernacular radio stations, there are programs. It is Inoro, it is Ramogi, it is Musie, it's all these. They have segments where they talk about Wado in Agikoyo or Pendchik in the Luo. They do. And people are oral. And I remember when we were doing the constitution, let me tell you, there is not a village in this country that I did not go to. There is not one. We were present in every village and we talked. People know. It is not this sophisticated legalese that you find in the document that defines what a constitution is. A constitution is about what is right and what is wrong. People know that they ought not to be bribed. We have just chosen the path of what now can be called, I think it's Luther King who called it moral relativism, that nothing is wrong. Everything depends on this or that. We must make a conscious decision. And that decision comes, the shortest avenue to it is to have enlightened and committed leadership. If you have it, then you can have a populace that responds. And I saw it. City will remember this. I hope so you also remember. When the NADCO administration came in for the first few days, people were arresting police officers for receiving bribes.
Yes.
Yep. And then a few days later, we went back to our factory setting. We now read in the newspapers that police officers collect 13 billion in bribes, traffic, documented. We don't get angry. So until the day that the anger wells up, and if you want to play safe, like most of us are going to playing safe, there comes a time when we can lose the country. And you can see it when you go around the country, see the abject abandon. Look at politicians. A politician comes and says, when the elections will be held in the year 2027 and the votes are not enough, we will steal votes and make them enough. Another one says that I'll mobilize people from my rural village and bring them to Nairobi and beat people up and they are not arrested. So what message are we sending? We are sending the message that we don't care. And they say in Kiswahili, mtego wa panya wanasa waliomo na wasiokuwemo. Those who want to remain in their little houses thinking that they are safe, when the house begins to burn, when the Titanic begins to sink, all of us, mwenzako akinyolewa kichwa chako kitie maji. Wamenyolewa Sudan, wamenyolewa Darfur, wamenyolewa Central African Republic, wananyolewa Eastern Congo. Kenyans had better wake up to the reality that if we continue on this trajectory, where leadership is impervious to reason, where leadership think that they are larger than life, where the leadership think that they are infallible, and where the population think that they can be led, in fact misled, because of ethnic considerations, then we are in danger of destroying this good country.
May I add to what you've just said? You know, those who present and give flesh to what you've just said are what you call the political leadership. And they lead large to the point where any other form of leadership in this country takes second place. The religious leaders have been challenged about this. Because we've had a time such as this one, and the people who rose up and put their foot down on what we now know as governance were religious leaders. They said no. This is not it. They were willing to challenge the political power structure. We have a religious structure that doesn't quite meet the muster of what is required of them. They are mandated to speak against wrong, actually.
Absolutely.
The faiths they believe in,
yes,
they are mandated. It's not a suggestion, they are mandated. If you look at the NADCO report that the professor has spoken of, Prof, remind me again, what were we told the NADCO report was supposed to provide us with? There was a lot of hoo-ha and huff about it. What was it supposed to do, actually?
Among other things, what it does is that we shall respect the constitution. You don't need to be told that we shall create the position of the leader of the opposition. We don't need that. We have a minority leader. That we shall create the office of a prime minister. We don't need that. That we shall ensure that we don't have high debt. There are laws to do that. That we shall ensure that our youth have employment. I mean, the NADCO report is is nonsense. I'm looking for a better word, but I can find none. It is nonsense. It is nonsense on stilts. And the people who came out with it, and they say it is a national report. And the same people who are now saying it's implemented are the very same people who are saying we now need a conclave. And let's be very clear, a conclave is a meeting held by the Roman Catholic Church to elect a pope. It is a meeting of cardinals. Let us also use words correctly, however we want to stretch them. My own view is we just need one simple thing: implement the Constitution and obey the laws. Once you do that, you don't need BBI, you don't need NADCO, you don't need conclaves. Perhaps what this country needs, because of our lack of fidelity to what we have, is a national conversation which will only have one agenda. Let us save ourselves from the hole into which we are stepping. Because when you come to Kenya today and you read your national newspaper and you are a foreigner, you think the elections in Kenya are 2 weeks away. If you are an investor, would you invest in such an environment?
Of course not.
In fact, our history is clear on those patterns. Every time we have an election, and the time keeps increasing, usually it was a couple of months before an election,
Absolutely.
you'd find economic activity slowing down. Then move to a year.
Yes.
And immediately after election, now there is literally no investment coming in because people
Absolutely.
are watching. And to exemplify this further, you will find that as we approach an election, there are very many embassies, many missions in this country send a lot of their staff out of the country back to their home.
Yes.
So you'd think we're at war.
Yeah.
And we have an election. It's not war.
Yeah.
Now that is how our elections are perceived. And yet, if you look at the actual process of casting the vote, it is one of the most beautiful days in the country.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a holiday.
It is a holiday.
Yes. I often can't believe the discussions I have when I'm queuing.
Yeah.
They are such honest discussions because we're not all voting for the same person.
Yeah.
And some of them you talk to someone you know, somebody else joins the conversation.
Yeah.
Now, more so in the last election, I found more people talking because when you are a public figure, people talk to you. The discussion, the voting process is 5 minutes. I was there for an hour.
Because you are conversing.
Yes.
Good conversation.
And we had differences of opinion. My friend, the day after the election, God Almighty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is like the voting day was a part of your imagination. Why I say that the need for the citizenry to understand that political leadership will never serve anything in your interest if they're not checked. If they know they will not be held accountable, they will try and get away with anything under the sun. When they know they will be checked, our political leadership have proved that they cannot be trusted to implement and ensure that the things that the citizens voted for will be received. They cannot be trusted.
And City, you've put it so very perfectly, because the attempt by your typical Kenyan and largely typical African politician is to circumnavigate the constitution and the law and to operate in an environment where anything goes. And that is why, for example, in this country, you find them trying to go around the constitution. That is why they try to, as I said a little earlier, to constitutionalize the unconstitutional. Look at the Governors' Conference. It's a jamboree at which you'll hear billions of shillings have been spent. We are not a federal. America does not hold that kind of nonsense.
They don't.
The South Africans don't hold that kind of nonsense, and they know it is nonsense. Because if you look at the amount of money that will be spent by the governors during those days in Homa Bay, it will be in the billions, which could have supplied computers to possibly half of the schools in this country. But what do? We are creating this kind of the meeting of Moseses who are liberating their counties. And the truth is, if you look at many governance in that regard, they are unchecked. Look at what is happening in most of these counties. Of course, some governors do better than others and their administration. But the truth is, the level of theft and looting is amazing. The level of theft, that is why, for example, the MPs want the Constituency Development Fund. Nothing wrong with Constituency Development Fund allocated to the constituency. But the MP wants to control it. Because in each constituency, take my word, the MP is behind the companies which are trading with the constituency. You'll never see their names. The MCAs also want their own. The women reps want their own. The senators want their own. Everybody wants their fund, which they are using as slush fund. It's called, in America, they call it pork barreling, where you spend public money in public projects for the purpose of enticing the election. All this you are seeing empowerment and all. This is electioneering using public funds because the politician thinks we are so stupid. That's how the Kenyan politician, that on average we the voters are so stupid that we cannot see through what they are doing. And people like you and me and Citi and others, they call us wachache wasiotosheka. So we are the minority who are dissatisfied, who are disgruntled. So the reality is, in all civilizations, I look at many people in the Kenyan administration who, if they were in Western Europe, they would have resigned. Because people will demand that they resign. Because they are not accountable. But here, the more reckless, the more vulgar you are, the more attractive you are
to the voter. Professor, what is the role of judiciary in our democracy, specifically here in Kenya? We have seen them try to interpret the law, especially when they are met with the cases in the courts. But I don't know, do you feel like they're doing enough to ensure that we have democracy in this country?
All arms of government have been emasculated in this country. You've asked about the judiciary. We've been here when the judiciary was at its weakest during the Moi era, when you had individuals whom I can name like Dugdale. We call him Dugdale in our days, in a Luanized version. He was a white man who did Moi's bidding. We had people like Pritam Singh Brau who did the government's bidding. Then there was a period of emboldenment of the judiciary. And when I say the judiciary, they are individual judges, but to me, the judiciary as presently constituted is at its weakest. That is not to say that they are not good individual judges. No, they are good. I've seen judges who have been bold, who have given decisions which are commendable, but institutionally the judiciary has become very weak. And people have learned to ignore the judiciary because the judiciary is weak. The judiciary actually has made a judgment that premature electioneering is unconstitutional.
And yet
we are continuing as if nothing has happened. We have seen senior police officers ignore summons. If I was a judge, that individual would be jailed on the face, contempt in the face of the court. The judiciary is so timid, and it is sad. For the first time, I've seen members of the highest court in the judiciary litigating in their own courts. So the judiciary has become so weak, and because they have become so weak, their decisions are ignored, and because they have become weak and they are ignored, they are a danger to democracy. It used to be said that a country can survive a weak executive, a weak legislature, but when the judiciary is gone, then it is the law of the jungle, and this is what we are beginning to see now.
But Prof, when we say the judiciary is weak, the understanding is that it wasn't always weak, or it wasn't always this week.
Yes, this week.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is it that is ailing the judiciary? Because, as you say correctly, the judiciary is well represented by specific and certain judges whose judgments, when you listen to, give you hope that this judiciary is functioning.
Correct.
But one doesn't need to hold one's breath on this issue, because you'll hear of another judgment and you wonder, how on earth did they arrive at this one? What is ailing the judiciary, if you can opine on it?
City, a number of things. One, we thought that changing the manner of appointment of judges would help to strengthen the judiciary. We thought that if judiciary or judicial officers are taken through a process of application, through a process of public interviews, that would strengthen the judiciary, number one. We thought that if you increase the salaries of judicial officers, then that would also immunize them from getting into the corruption cobweb. But unfortunately, what has happened is that the political class have ensured that even the process of application and appointment of judges is controlled by them. You look at the composition of the Judicial Service Commission, it is not proven, but there are suggestions that it is not merit that rules the day. So when one is appointed and has political godfathers, then one is likely to pander to their whims. Number two, we have judicial officers who are also in competition to enjoy the goodies of lives. And we know anecdotally that there are individuals who use their seats in the judiciary to feather their nest. And that is why we have had purges to remove this. And when that happens, coupled also with ethnicity, there are elements within the judiciary who think it is their duty to protect their people when they are in power. So those three things conjoined, the mode and corruption of the appointing processes, number two, corruption, and number three, ethnicity, are the combined factors that have weakened the judiciary as an institution. As I've already said, there are individual judges who still continue to come out firmly, and history will vindicate them over the years that they were doing the right thing. But the general thing now is that they are susceptible and easy to intimidate also. I've seen, for example, the leadership of the judiciary visiting certain places, and it gives meaning to what there's a Ugandan called Picho Ali, who in 1960s he was asked, and it was quoted by Dan Wadada that the so-called independence of the judiciary is a fiction. What we have is actually division of labor. and in Kenya, we are now beginning to see that more often. And then there is an English judge who said something that is very important to judges, that I view with apprehension judges who on mere matters of interpretation become more executive-minded than the executive. And that is what we have now in Kenya. Uh-huh. Lack of courage, city.
Do I hear you
Yes.
saying, Professor, that there are people who are within the judiciary who have turned the judiciary into a marketplace?
Oh yeah, we know that. We know that. And there are cases in the Judicial Service Commission exactly on those issues. Some of them, of course, is anecdotal, given the nature of corruption, is that once the two parties are satisfied, nobody wants to speak.
No, and it isn't receipted.
Yes,
So
and it isn't received. And ESCC,
Yes.
to their credit, have done their own investigation. And I think in one of their latest reports, the judiciary occupies the enviable position of being in the top 5, I think. Top 3. So it gets a medal. Whether it's bronze or gold or silver, I think the police get the gold, and then the judicial.
You know, there has been this discussion
Yes.
about how it is that our parliament has been captured. I am of a contrary view. Mm-hmm. The executive does not elect members of parliament. Even individuals who head the executive don't elect. They may influence.
Yes.
But there's a limit to that influence. If the limit wasn't there, then you wouldn't have such a large number of people who don't belong to the party that the individual who heads it is the president of, and the president of the country. When individuals who have had powers donated to them by the holders of that power, the people on whom the Constitution bequeaths that power, and they don't exercise it, my view is that they haven't been captured. These are people who have determined that they are going to sell the very power
we gave them.
Yes, they sell it. Because when you hear of horse trading and things that happen, again, anecdotally, who is putting a gun to your head and they didn't? I mean, this, if, and this is my point, if indeed a gun can be put to your head by someone, because anecdotally, again, they've given you money, well, the people who gave you that power have a bigger gun to put on your head.
But City, you know, you've said something that I had never thought about it that way, but I agree with you. I agree with you that this is a conscious decision. But let us start from one of the things that I think is part of the problem. You remember we said when we were making the constitution that in order to immunize elected individuals and political and people from this kind of manipulation, let us finance political parties.
Yes.
But what we have in Kenya are not political parties. These are vehicles that are used periodically for purposes of acquiring power. That is why you discover that since 1997, there is not a single political party that has contested elections as a single political party. It's formations. It is either Kenya Kwanza or One Code or NASA or something. So that there is no fidelity to any ideals of a political party, and people are beholden to individuals rather than to political parties. So if you go to ODM, for example, they are beholden to their leader. If you go to UDA, they are beholden to their leader. If you go to WIPA, they are beholden to their leader. If you go to Jubilee, is a little bit tenuous, but they are beholden to this individual. So to whom do you owe allegiance? Not the people. It is these ethnic kingpins who I call low voltage warlords, because the only thing is that they don't have armies, but they control, they rule the roost. They can come and hoist your hand, and lo and behold, the people will ululate and say you are the chosen one. So once you have that, then they ignore the electorate. The electorate is no longer significant, and I think that the electorate must assert itself, and I'm very happy with this process where the people are now saying we want to recall our MP. I think it is an attempt by the electorate to say power belongs to us, and you can see the argument here that there are no rules to recall an MP.
You're watered down.
Yes,
in the Uhuru era.
Yeah, but
completely.
The day we start to exercise that power, then these individuals will see that really our employer is the electorate.
But Professor, if you look at so-called mature democracies and the systems that they have, all those systems have somebody called a whip.
Yes.
And if you do not show fidelity to the party under whose banner you are elected and you disagree,
you're whipped to toe the line.
There are consequences, even in those mature democracies.
Absolutely.
But you see, the fidelity isn't to an individual.
Yes.
All those political parties, if I may use a Kenyan term, have their owners.
Yes, indeed.
It's true.
And those owners expect you to conduct yourself in a certain manner. There are those who could also argue that what we see in Kenya is part of our evolutionary process. This is how we are evolving to understand politics, political parties, and how it is. And I think perhaps the best thing that could happen to us is when these forms of political parties fail, because then they become very instructional.
Yes.
You get to understand. I say this because America has provided us with an ongoing series of events as to what it is that can happen to even a liberal democratic system when the individuals forget what it is that this government was all about to begin with. And what they pursue are the very things that our people are doing. You pursue personal interest. So you elect someone who you believe will represent your interest, then the complete opposite happens.
Absolutely.
Now you're in for a period of some very serious learning. I think the process of democratization, in my view, even in this country, requires the sort of things we are seeing. Because you then understand fully, without being told, the consequences of this vote that you keep casting.
Yeah.
And the support that you keep giving. Because the understanding is that you will benefit as a citizen. So how long can you continue voting and you actually never see the benefit?
Absolutely. And City, you remember that this idea to party fidelity is not a new thing.
No.
The turncoat rule in 1966, when Oginga Odinga and Kagia were crossing over, was introduced in order to tell them that when you go to another political party, you've got to go back to the electorate to gain fresh mandate
in this new party.
And we have bastardized, and even when a political party actually goes against the grain, and that is how you must understand, for example, this marriage of convenience that has been entered into with the ODM and the Kenya Kwanza is a marriage of convenience where one side of the mouth says we are not with them, we have merely donated our experts, and the other one saying we are with them. So you have this hermaphrodite of an arrangement, if you permit me, which negates the very idea of democracy and checks and balances. And perhaps you are right, if one has to be charitable, that it is an evolution process. And one only prays and hopes that it evolves into something, because one of the dangers that I see with this process is that even fidelity to the party is ethnic. I saw that, I've seen that in the saga that you find in ODM, for example, where the Secretary General is being reminded by elements within the ODM, some elements, without being rebuked by the party leadership in sustained manner, that this is our party, this is our tribal party. You go and ask your tribe to form another party. So that the evolution may actually spiral out of the rail and lead us into the direction that we do not deserve. But I think sometimes it is necessary for this kind of pain to be borne, for people to wake up.
Prof, you've stood for elections.
Yes.
There was something that you offered.
Yes.
And those who you sought the votes from, somewhere along the line did not quite see your point of view.
You know, City, I've written a book about it. and this is a testament to how naive one can be. Because I produced something called Sauti ya Kamukunji with my agenda.
Yes.
There was a man called Bruce Willis who was then the head of the World Bank.
Yes.
I went with him to the Kamukunji there, and he said that if you elect this individual, we are going to, through my private resources, to ensure that we modernize this. I held 250 town hall meetings talking to people. I had only 1.5 million.
Of your own?
Was given to me. 1 million was given by a man called Wala bin Wala. He gave me 1 million.
The author?
Yes, the author. I was shocked. And another one was given by my mother, who wanted to remain anonymous. I'll not say, my mother, adoptive mother, who said that she should always remain anonymous. I spent only 1 million. And believe me, on the day of voting, and this is my naivete, the people that I was campaigning amongst were not voters in Kamukunji. They were resident in Kamukunji. But the Luo group had taken their votes in Kibera. The Luhia group had taken their votes in Westlands.
Yes.
The Kamba group had taken their votes in Embakasi. The other candidate had meanwhile registered voters in Kiambu and the periphery. And on the day of the voting, I meet people that I do not know who are the voters. So I mean, how can you beat that? The gentleman did not campaign, so I felt very stupid. And I think there are people who, even as we speak now, that is what they do.
Yes.
So that is why they don't even care, because even the people who voted for them are not resident in that constituency. That is true of most of these Nairobi constituencies.
Yes.
Voters are important. And in my particular case, it was very interesting. When the voting then started, the vote counting, ballot papers were strewn all over. And the candidate who was declared the winner was actually declared winner by court, and the number of votes cast in his favor, we do not know up to today. But that tells you that if you go there, good intentions alone are not sufficient. You'll be shocked.
Next time, perhaps if you ever join politics, campaign elsewhere, but go where the voters are.
No, I think you register your own vote.
Professor, chapter 6 on leadership and integrity.
Yes.
We have seen Kenyans who have got that integrity and they're in leadership positions, but unfortunately this country is not kind to whistleblowers or people who want to let me call it be righteous as far as leadership is concerned. People end up dead, people end up disappeared, and so on and so forth. How then can we deal with that situation? Because it is a very huge part of a democratic space.
We keep on keeping on. There used to be a program on one of the national TVs a long time ago. City, you remember?
KBC.
Keep on keeping on.
Voice of Kenya.
Yes, Voice of Kenya.
Yes.
And I think we must not tire. The voices that we keep on, and this is intergenerational. If there are people, I mention it because he's my friend and was my teacher at one time. Look at the manner in which Professor Kibwana served in Makueni. Like him or hate him, he was clear, and you can see the dividends of his commitment to his people. The MCAs wanted to remove him, but he remained. He said, I am prepared to leave, but I'm going to do the right thing. So when you do the right thing, there is a sense in which people appreciate. But as it is now, people call themselves bad boys and bad girls in this administration, and that is meant to be a point of attraction. So I am of the view that it is not going to be easy, but Kenyans are reaching the tipping point where they are able to say that enough is enough. Why are they reaching the tipping point? Because, one, there is no money in the pockets of the middle class. There is no money in many households, and they are asking why. The level of insecurity, the greatest growth industry in Kenya today is our security guards, which tells you insecurity is there both in rural and urban Kenya. I grew up partly in rural Kenya and in Nairobi, and when I go to Eastlands, I talk to those young fellows, and I go there every 2 weeks, and I talk to them. They are graduates who have never ever secured a job, and they are 40 years of age in their parents' homes. And I think that people are beginning to wake up. When you saw this Gen Z revolt, if you may, and I saw that young girl doing the poll vote and crossing that razor wire, to me, that was an iconic moment. The message, the hidden message there was, nothing will stand in our way. It is going to be painful. It is going to be slow, but I think we are beginning to move in that direction.
Yeah.
And I saw recently, when there was an attempt to profile the Agikoyo, people came out and say, I am Kikuyu. People are saying that. In other words, they were telling those who are trying to profile people from an ethnic standpoint, we are all is the same. It's just like, I think it is Martin Niemöller who said it after the World War II, when he says, first they came for the Jews, then they came for the communists, then they came for the trade unions, and then they came for me. In other words, you must not think it is for them, it is for all of us. And this country is a beautiful country. If you look at even the UN saying that they are bringing their officers, is a vote of confidence on us. But how are we dealing with it? How is the political leadership dealing with it? So don't despair. I think that it is said in Greek mythology that when the Pandora's box was opened, the only thing that remained trapped was hope. So we must never lose hope. And there are many good people. The trouble with good people is that they tend to work in silos. They don't collaborate. Evil people know how to network. The time is now for good people to network. And I've told some of my friends who have said that they want to be president, stop it. Being president is not going to solve the problems of this country. Network. let us ask ourselves what is the problem of this country and present a team to the country which is capable of saying, when we seek and obtain power, we are going to be a government of transition, will serve for 5 years, and none of us will ever seek election again, so that we repair the good things. But if you say everybody wants to be a president, they think they are Moses going to part Red Seas, they'll be disappointed. So I'm saying, organize and don't agonize, and do so on issues. Agriculture, look at education sector collapsing. Our own University of Nairobi is in debt of 13 billion. You are reducing the cost allocation capitation to university, and yet inflation has increased. I mean, it's something, we are doing things that nobody can understand. So I am of the view that the good elements within Parliament must continue to raise their voices. I remember this, and City, you will remember this, both in Parliament. There was a time when people like Jean-Marie Seronnet were lone voices in Parliament.
Yes.
When people like Martin Shikuku were lone voices in Parliament. When people like Bildad Kagia outside were lone voices. People and like, to his credit, even Oginga Odinga.
People like Chelagat
Mutai. They were lone voices in Parliament. And in the religious sector, we had people like Maurice Cardinal Otunga, Alexander Kipsang Muge, John Henry Okulu, yes. Timothy Njoya. They were Father Ndikaru wa Teresia. These were there. And yes. When they issued a pastoral paper, pastoral letter, Moi would call them to State House and the country would calm down. Those voices are now far and few and far between.
Yes.
Now we have fellows who wear very big crosses and claim to be religious fellows, and they are called to State House, and when they leave you see them carrying some envelope which I've never looked at keenly, but I suspect
it's Sadaka.
So there is a sense in which we cannot afford the luxury. And media such as yours, because a country is built through debate. If you look at all revolutions, whether it's the Bolshevik, Menshevik, whether it's the French Revolution, whether it is the struggle for independence, there were warriors. And there were thinkers behind the warriors, and there were those who voiced. So we are in that space. We are on the cusp of something. My good friend Barack Okwaro Maina Muluka wrote a piece about 2 weeks ago about liberal democracy. And he said that when the American Declaration of Independence was said, we hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are born equal. And then he says, it is for this reason that governments are instituted amongst men to do certain things. And when they don't do those things, it is our right to remove such governments.
Thank you so much, Professor. Unfortunately, that's all the time we had. Perhaps we shall invite you again to come and talk about the strategy the Kenyans need to employ, because clearly the one that they currently have is not working for them. Asante sana, Mungu akubariki.
Mungu akujalie kwa kuipa sauti.
Asante.
Asante sana.